This is great. Yes.
All right, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock, and I'd like to call together the September 14th, 2023 school committee meeting. If we would start by rising and allegiance, flags in different spots here. Very good. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Yes, I thought we didn't have our flag.
Yeah.
So this evening we have a consent agenda posted. We also have oath to bills and payroll. I don't see any minutes from our previous meeting, but we'll catch up on those. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda and oath to bills and payroll?
I'll move to accept.
Made by Jen,
Second.
seconded by Stacy. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. We can mark that unanimous. This is our first opportunity for interested citizens. So if there's anybody with us this evening, either in person or on Zoom, that would like to speak before the school committee. Okay. Close that portion of the meeting and we'll move on to our recognition portion of the evening. So I'm excited to announce that we have with us this evening Jay Kang, who will be one of two representatives joining us throughout the year. And Jay is going to start off by giving us the student representatives report. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi.
Can you tell us something like what grade are you in and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. So I'm a senior at Littleton High School. I play varsity soccer, varsity track, indoor and outdoor. And I'm the student representative. I'm interested in law and everything. So Dr. Harrington picked me, which I'm very grateful for. Thank you, Dr. Harrington. I was chosen the student representative with Jacinda Sanders, who unfortunately couldn't make it today because she has a field hockey game, hardly field hockey for the high school. All right, speaking of the high school, looking at the high school's agenda, tomorrow is photo day, so that's when we get our photos taken for IDs and everything like that. And Tuesday, September 26th, is the senior college planning night, which is where guidance counselors help guide seniors through, the college application process and things like that, help with college things in general. And on Saturday, October 14th, is the PSAT at Littleton High School, which is a great opportunity for students to get scholarships or to get a snapshot of where they are academically and also help prepare for, say, the SAT. And on Saturday, October 21st, is the Littleton High School's homecoming dance. The middle school, regarding Littleton Middle School, is off to a great start this year. And with back to school night on Monday, early release yesterday, and picture day today, they are in full swing of the new school year. Besides that, there are no other announcements from the middle school. Looking towards Shaker Lane is happy to share that they've had a great start to the school year. This marks the first full week of school, and the students have adjusted well to the new school year and the new school schedule. Last week, kindergarten and transitional families were able to visit with their child's teachers during their back to school curriculum night. Unified Arts teachers also had a wonderful showing prior to the kindergarten and transitional times. The next Tuesday evening, grades 1 and 2 look forward to meeting with their families for back to school curriculum night. And Russell Street, they have their own presentation, so I'll leave that to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Clench, is there any other recognition? You have some later on in your superintendent's report, but anything special for this time?
Just excited that our first football game starts tomorrow night, and we have a special celebration starting at 6:30. And looking forward to the game, and no rain and hopefully no wind during that night. Keep our fingers crossed. And that's it. I can go into my.
So I'll pass it back to
Ready?
you. I'll read this for the purposes of the minutes, but we've got a number of new business items this evening, the first of which is superintendent's report. So Dr. Kelly Clench will report on the first day back, personnel updates, enrollment update, district strategic plan, sewer project update, 23-24 school committee presentation schedule, Boston Magazine rates Littleton High School number 6, and the recent heat wave, which doesn't feel so recent anymore, but it did at the time. So we will pass it back to you.
Glad you said that about the heat wave. It's amazing how quickly we forget your things. I'm fine with that. It was pretty hot. So first day back, we had I think an incredible first day back. I'd like to thank all of our staff, our educators, our cafeteria staff, custodians, clerical staff, for having everything ready for our students' first day back. I'm always so pleased, and I'm smiling when I go through the schools before the students arrive, because our classrooms are already decorated. It's such a nice, warm environment for our students to walk into. And it takes a lot of extra time on our staff's part to make sure that happens. Our custodians, our schools are immaculate. It's just incredible. You walk down the halls and you almost need sunglasses with the reflection coming off the floors from the lights. So, kids settled in quickly. I know that first week it was a little trying at times with the temperature and the rain, etc. But I'll talk about that a little later on in my report. But very pleased. Our new staff hires, we hired incredible staff. It's always nice when you have some movement in your district to have a good pool of candidates to draw from. We're in good shape. We've set ourselves up for a great year. Personnel report, you can tell by the length of the report that we had a busy summer. And I'm going to kind of make it a little easier to understand because there's a lot of things going on in this summary. So we had 28 new hires. That's the first section of the document. And of those 28 hires, 16 were educators. And 5 were on long-term leave. We're replacing people on long-term leave. And we have 4 educators that retired. So that's 9. So, it gives you an idea of the number of new staff he's actually hired for people that are new to the district. We had teachers or educators move out for a variety of reasons. A lot of them moving closer to home or relocation of the family. And we had one individual that was shoulder tapped by somebody that used to work for us, which is becoming more frequent as time goes on. Transfers are pretty straightforward. It's always nice to be able to take a look at our staff that have been with us for a while when we open up new positions, and if they're qualified and eager to transfer into a position, we do consider our staff first, and it's always nice to be able to do that. The last page I pretty well went over already with the retirees in terms of the 4 educators. It was a little busier summer in terms of hiring than we've ever had. There are a number of times where we thought we had a candidate, had the paperwork done, and everything scheduled to sign them on the dotted line, and we get a call that they took another job at the last minute. And I think all of us were a little frustrated for a while there. And we had that last 2 weeks, we were surprised at how many staff actually took jobs somewhere else. So we were busy, but we managed to pull it off. We're in far better shape than most districts, and we do have a few openings that are still being filled. In Shaker Lane, we are still looking for 1 teaching assistant, which is not bad considering the size of our staffs. Russell Street, we have 3 TAs that we're still looking for. And middle school is fully staffed. Littleton High School, we're looking for a SPED teacher, moderate disabilities. We're able to cover that job with the staff that we have. Remember, we have a bridge program. The business in the bridge program isn't that significant at this point in time, so we can redeploy staff to cover that position. We're hoping to find a qualified candidate as soon as possible. Dr. Harrington, I didn't talk to you today, but it doesn't take a long time for me to figure out what was happening in your school, and apparently you're prepared or close to being ready to offer a position to the TA position that's open. Is that correct?
We have an interview scheduled here.
Perfect.
So we're confident the candidate was good, but we have not yet. So,
Okay, so hopefully that'll turn out. So if you know anybody watching the school committee meeting tonight that's looking for some employment, we want to let you know that we have some jobs available for you to take. Our custodians, our staffing, I believe, is full at this point in time. Custodial, our cafeteria staff, we're doing okay. Our secretaries are fully staffed. So we're in quite an envious position compared to a number of districts, as I pointed out before. The enrollment update is the next on the agenda. This is a glimpse of what we have right now. Officially, we do an October 1st enrollment that we send to the state. Sometimes there's a variation from what we're presenting tonight. Justin had sent me some questions today, so I had an opportunity to spend some time looking at them, and some of these things are not as easy as one would think to tease out because there's so many factors that are coming into play. But Do you want me to just go over the questions that you asked or
Sure.
up to you? Okay. The first question that Justin had when he looked at this sheet, thank you for taking a look at it. We had projected 126 kindergarten students, and we ended up with 120. And when we're looking at kindergarten enrollment, there are a number of thing we look at. There's something called the town census. And the town census had 95 potential students, and they conduct a census every year. The accuracy of whether those people are still in the community, differs from year to year. And I think there was more discrepancy this year than we've seen in a while. We had 95 potential students from the census, 18 didn't register. The school tried to track as many down as they could, but most of the time it was a dead end. And people perhaps moved away. Some people might have chosen a private kindergarten placement. And remember, kindergarten isn't mandatory in terms of public education. So it's a little harder to figure out where they've gone. So that discrepancy was the result of ending up with the number that you have on the document tonight of 120. Transition was another question. And yes, the 2 transition students would go up to 15. We had a few families move out. I can believe it was 3. So that would account for the difference there. And we had some families that decided they didn't want to have their child spend another year, within the kindergarten environment. So they moved into grade 1. If I keep going here, so when we look at the enrollment for Shaker Lane October 1st last year and the September enrollment we have before us tonight, there's a difference in 5 students. We're down 5 students, which was a pretty minimal variance. Who knows what's going to happen during the year? As I pointed out before, there's some transients in our community, like every community. Our enrollment can fluctuate district-wide anywhere from 20 to 40 students, depending on the money, depending on what's happening in terms of job market, etc. So, and kindergarten school choice seats, we did offer 6. We had 6 accept, but 1 backed out at the last minute, and that's why we have 5.
Okay.
Closed student or school choice for the year.
And we actually have 2 students that are school choice in the transitional program. That's a tough one because you hadn't project. I mean, that's tough to project. Right? Is that what that says?
Yes, yes, that's true. That's notes all over the place.
Right.
I'm trying to figure this out. Yes, that's correct.
So we had offered 6. We were going to kind of end up with a net 7 because of likely those 2 were going to join the 5 in that entire class. So that's okay.
Yeah.
I guess to summarize my questions, it seems like the enrollment data for Shaker Lane was a little harder to project than some of the other schools, probably because it's younger families and they're getting established in town, that type of thing.
True.
With the Shaker Lane project and the construction in town and the economy and interest rates, I was just kind of curious if we thought maybe we had projected new families coming into town over the past couple of months, and that just didn't simply happen this summertime because inventory was low, or whether we actually lost students to private placement or other alternatives. So
no, we're pretty good at this point in time. I mean, the data we use is data that we have that point in time. We don't include anybody in our calculations unless we have a purchase and sale agreement and they're moving into town. So we're very careful in terms of how we calculate these numbers. It's going to ebb and flow, and the next couple of years, number of houses for sale, number of new houses that are built in town will dictate how our population changes. I mean, there may be times where you won't see very much happening at Shaker Lane, but at Russell Street in the middle school, you may see an injection of students. So there are no guarantees when people move into a town that they have students that are, K-2 age, pre-K-2 age. Sure.
As Dr. mentioned, he called me earlier today, we were talking about this discrepancy. The 95 students that were on the census, as he mentioned, there were 18 families that did not enroll. We tried to track down those 18 families. We sent letters to those houses. We went on MLS listings and see if the house is sold and figure out. So though that was the biggest number that I've ever seen, this is my 7th year here, that's the biggest discrepancy I've seen from the census, and we could track down those 18 families. So, and I agree, Justin, over the summer, I did not see as many kindergarten enrollments as past summers, so I don't know if, you know, how this can sell. I don't think there were many boards there in Littleton.
Right.
So this is a little different than past years. Usually that census is off by like 6, 7, 8 kids. So I'll track the data over the coming years, but this was a big number that our administrative assistant Jillian Anderson and I tried to track down.
Gotcha. And then also it looks like we were pretty successful in increasing the school choice seats, which I know was a big part of the conversation as we wrapped up last year.
Right, yeah.
So I think we were projected to have, or projected that we were gonna have 84 in the system, or that was the number from last year. We were hoping to add some, and we're up to 102.
Right, yeah, so we did very well this year. Yeah, I mean, it's nice that we can do this. I mean, as I've said a number of times, we have families that are on waiting lists to try to get into our school district. So we're in a great position. There are no surprises for the enrollment. I think the only discrepancy that really caught my attention was that K class, because we really did anticipate more coming in this year, and but we've seen this happen in the past. Yeah.
And the so it looked like we're gonna have about 120 students, Littleton residents in 7th grade. And the current enrollment's only 108. Are we losing students at the 7th grade level for a particular reason?
Well, you have to remember the transition between 6 and 7. We always have students that choose to go to Parker Charter.
Okay.
So we had a number of students go to Parker Charter, and 4 families actually moved out of town.
Okay. All right, thank you for addressing that.
Sure. And total change in enrollment from October 1st last year to September this year, we're down 20 students at this point, so district-wide.
You know, what's interesting is the youth soccer program is also down, and they were wondering if there were actually less kids in Littleton. And I was like, no, that can't be. There's got to be more kids in Littleton. Because that's just the general assumption, right? The town's growing, but it looks like maybe there are actually a couple less kids in Littleton this year, so.
Next item, district strategic plan that's included in your package. It's 2023 to 2028. We have an opportunity to go over this at our retreat. We're excited to enter another strategic plan and continue to move our district forward in terms of not only meeting our vision, but getting closer to our vision. Sewering project update. It was, I think that was one of the things that certainly were on Steve and my mind in terms of, you know, how were the buses going to run that first day with the construction on Russell Street. I'd like everybody to remember that this summer was atypical in terms of the amount of rain that we had. You can't work in weather where it's pouring out there, and so it delayed the schedules. If we would have had a normal summer, I would venture to guess that they would have been done that Russell Street project prior to the start of school. I had a conversation with Nick Lawler the other day, and a couple of things that are important. We still have 3 weeks of work in that Russell Street road. After that, they'll be paving it for us, so things should be back to normal. They are working at night, which is huge in terms of traffic movement during the day. So feel good about that. They're finished the high school area, and they'll be back sometime in the winter to install a new pump station. So things are looking much better for us. And the rest of the town, I kind of try to stay out of that. So, let the other individuals who are responsible for those projects to communicate with everybody. And but there's a lot of work going on in town, as we all realized. And for me personally, I didn't realize that the sewering project was as big as it was. I mean, it covers a lot of area. Kind of caught me by surprise as well.
And that project is still and will continue to have impact on busing, routes and timing and all that kind of stuff. So we ask parents to be patient with kids at bus stops and be out there early just in case.
Do we have a specific point of contact for updating the schools if there's going to be construction delays? Because we know that's going to be happening. Steve, are you
I'm on the distribution list for the updates, and then we forward that, so are all the principals, and I forward that to the bus company, so everybody's aware of what's going on and what's coming out. Nick Lawler usually gives us a 3-week look at it,
Okay,
and so we forward that to all the interested parties.
okay. So we should know 3 weeks ahead of time if there's gonna be some type of delay or if there's construction.
Well, as much as
This is where I
possible, if the weather changes, if we get rain like we did this week and the tail end of last week, it really puts them behind because everything they've done to prepare the roads is washed away.
Right.
So they have to go back and, put more gravel down on the roads to level it out. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there are always factors that may interfere with that plan, but usually as long as there's nothing atypical that happens, it's pretty accurate. So people need to get that project done and get paid, and a lot of people working on that project, and they'd rather be working than sitting at home because it's raining.
Yeah, and because they're doing a lot of the work at night now, there's minimal impact on the busing, but there still is some spillover with construction and that kind of stuff that does impact some bus routes. But again, we're forwarding that to the bus company, and if we need to notify parents, which we had to do first day of school, that we couldn't get down a road to pick up the students, and we make those phone calls.
And in terms of busing, considering the magnitude of the change that we introduced in our community, I mean, all new bus routes, a lot of new drivers that need to learn the routes. That first day, despite the construction that they were maneuvering around, our buses weren't off schedule very much at all. Like, I was really impressed, to be honest with you. And as the week progressed, I mean, they're still working their routes out. I mean, sometimes they'll miss a stop and somebody moved. That's not unusual. And by the second week, third week, they'll have this memorized. And what I really like from what I see at this point in time, we have the same drivers from day to day. One of my biggest worries is we're going to have a number of substitute drivers during the week, and it would take them much longer to figure out the routes. And that consistency is so important for us and for our families as well.
There's one thing we can improve for the registration process for buses is to have parents have a confirmation. I think that they are registered.
Oh,
Because we don't get anything, we don't get any email or anything. It just says like it's a success. But then there's nothing really to loop back, because I know a lot of parents, including myself, is like, did I register? Did I get something? Or is the bus gonna get them? And
Yeah, that's-
luckily, it was fine, but
okay.
Noted, we're working with our developer to try to improve, take it to the next level and,
Yeah.
and try to make some additional improvements to it. So we're also possibly working on maybe being able to print a bus pass instead of having to mail them, but that's a lot more complicated and things like that. So we're working to try to tweak that, but I will certainly note that.
yeah, it helped because I know there's always discrepancy of, did I get my bus pass? Does that mean I didn't register? Does the school know to pick up the kids? So it's helpful just to at least be able to have the emails and say like, okay, I'm good. The bus is gonna come get them. I may not have my pass. but
So
we're all
for
set.
now, no news is good news, because those people that register that, for instance, a payment didn't go through or something, we usually email those parents and say, hey, the payment didn't go through. So if you registered and you didn't get notification, that's usually a good sign.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Not always, but usually.
I do think we can do better and send an email. People are used to getting confirmation, right? I understand. And with busing, I mean, it's a huge thing for families to make sure that if you want your child on a bus, that you're actually going to get it. So it's going to happen. So that confirmation is important. That's one comment in that area. I mean, for some families, I know everybody's busy, but the sooner we know that your child or children are going to ride the bus, the much easier it is for us to map out routes. I mean, you have to remember that our routes are mapped out every year, depending on population density of students of different ages. And we had, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had over 60,
Close to 65.
65 late people registering. That's huge for us to try to figure out. And at times it may not be possible to figure out. I mean, we're fortunate that a lot of those registrations were in areas where we had that population cluster. If it wouldn't have been, I don't know if we would have been able to figure it out. So it's so important that we know as soon as possible, once we open it up, that if you want your child or children to ride the bus, we really need that information. Because it's complex mapping out all the routes in town. Well, again, if I had a wish for next year at this time, I would hope that most of the parents, if not all the parents, would register within our timeline. Just make it much easier, less stressful for parents as well.
Can I also, Kelly, give a quick shout out? Last Friday, there was some pretty scary weather, and I just want to really commend the administrators and the over communication to parents, which was so appreciated. Like I heard from a lot of parents, because the buses were really late and it was kind of expected, but then, you know, you get in your head and you get worried, and just all those emails saying bus 5 is late and bus 9, and that was really, really appreciated, and just keeping the children safe until they could get home. So
Oh, we appreciate
Thank
you
you.
saying that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was interesting. I wasn't sure whether we were gonna be able to dismiss, and then all of a sudden the storm kind of subsided and, you know, just in time for Russell Street dismissal. I was worried because it was lightning and pouring, and then all of a sudden it kind of just lifted for about an hour and a half before it hit again. So we were lucky. It was amazing that happened. And of course, we had some damage in town that interfered with us trying to get students home. And it is, you know, for the families, you need to know that if a bus can't get kids to their location, they bring them back to the school. And then we deal with it, you know, from at the school end, and you know, if necessary, involve our police department, fire department, et cetera, to help us figure out what we can do. But they're not going to be stranded out there. If they can't get home, they'll be bused back to our schools. Any other questions before I move on? Nope. Summary of our school committee presentations were updated and sent to you. I thought I'd include in the school committee packet as well. And we did create that file for all the school committee members. So you just go to one file and find all your school committee packets for the year. Easy reference as well when you have one place to go, or folders, I should say, not files. Recent heat wave. Shaker Lane seemed to be the biggest concern, and rightly so. It's our oldest school, and that second floor is you know, built way back, and I believe it was the 50s, but when they built schools back then, insulation wasn't really a huge priority. The second floor of Shaker Lane has a metal roof, no insulation, about what, 7-foot ceiling, 7.5-foot ceiling. And it's a challenge at times. A good thing that we've been working on air conditioning for years, and Shaker Lane has all but 6 rooms air conditioning at this point in time. But having said that, even with air conditioners in the second floor, I mean, we had temperatures over 100 on Thursday last week, and even with a good air conditioner, it's tough because you were still bringing air into the school, and we need fresh air into the school, and we're trying to play with the dampers. You know, it's all computerized. We're trying to get the right mixture of fresh air versus the cold air in the room. We brought back the air conditioning company that installed those air conditioners and had them take a look at them. He's going to give us a quote. We want them to do a few extra things to try to increase the power of the air conditioners in a few of our rooms. But the mornings were okay. You know, when I look at the averages of temperatures Thursday, let me go back here a little bit. So on one of the days, our morning temperature was fine, between all classes, 75 to 81 degrees, and that's including the six rooms that aren't air conditioned. PM temperature range 76 to 84. On the hottest day in the morning, the temperatures were low to mid 80s. I mean, that was a pretty hot day. The temperatures in the afternoon, depending on the room, ranged from 82 to 90. The 88 to 90 were the rooms that didn't have air conditioning. But you have to remember, we have cooling centers. Our cafeteria is air conditioned. It's a newer part of the school, so there's no installation issues. Our library is air conditioned, no installation issues. So that air conditioning is really working fine. In fact, there was a couple of places downstairs that on Friday when I was in the school, I was actually cold. So it is working, but that upper floor until we get a new school is always going to be a challenge. So it was a little uncomfortable at times. Yes, but you know what, we're far better off than most districts. Most districts don't have air conditioning at all.
Mhm.
So we're working on it and it's essential that our students and staff are hydrated and we have water bottle stations and we're checking on kids all the time. So we realized it was a little uncomfortable, but we did okay. We managed fine. And in Shaker Lane or at Shaker Lane School, we do have the luxury of combining classes and doing some team teaching as well for those 6 classrooms that are air conditioned. So there are a number of things that we can do. Questions about the heat wave that's almost out of our minds?
No, just we had, we had a couple of folks reach out to us just to say that, conditions were hot. And we sympathize with those individuals. It's like we had discussed, it's, a problem that potentially could happen at the very beginning of the year and the very end of the year. And we can't allocate unlimited resources to a problem that's not likely going to take place 95% of the school year. So we're doing the best we can, a lot of creative strategies there. And with Stacy in charge of a new school project, hopefully, a couple years down the road, we won't have to worry about this with Shaker Lane, but.
Well, yeah, so the new building won't be completed for another 4 to 5.
Not for a while.
Not for a while, not for another 4 to 5 years. So I think, if we are seeing more extended heat waves like we are, especially now that we're starting earlier. It is uncomfortable for the kids and it's uncomfortable for the staff. My kids are both in there and they're coming home red cheeked and exhausted. So I think 1 to 2 days, I'm all about teaching the kids some grit. I used to sweat it out myself when I was in school. But when we're reaching 3-4 days, those rooms are just kind of accumulating in heat. They don't have a chance to cool down. And it's my understanding that teachers can't open the windows at night either to kind of bring in cool air.
Well, they can, but they're not going to open up. It's not going to make a difference.
Right,
If
yeah,
the temperature goes down to 70, 60, 65, those windows would be open and we'd open up our HVAC systems, pulling in 100% fresh air. So there
Yeah.
are things we can do. I mean, Stacy, I understand, and there, if we had a 2-week heat wave, maybe we would look at things differently, but we have to be cautious here. We don't know what the winter is going to bring, and we can't go, this calendar year, we're pretty good, but until this calendar year, we're in the last week of June. So, I mean, 99% of the schools in Massachusetts stayed open for those days, and we'll be cautious. I mean, safety is our #1 priority, and if we end up in a situation where we think there's the duration of heat for a number of days that we have is at a point where we need to do something, we will.
Yeah.
So we're aware.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No.
Boston Magazine ratings. There are 150 high schools in the Boston area, and I'm very proud and pleased to be able to announce that Littleton High School ranked number 6, so we're in the top 10. We've been in the top 10 for a while. Kudos to our high school staff, students, and families, and it goes beyond that. Our education starts in preschool, and everything that happens in all of our schools, the support of our families and the commitment of our students results in the progress that helps result in the progress that we see at our high schools. So again, this is a community celebration as a whole. And again, I'd like to thank the community for their support, because without the support that we receive in terms of fiscal support, it would be much harder to do what we're doing and get the recognition that we continue to get. So thank you. One last item that I talked to Chairman about is when we redesign the calendar, we're obviously finishing a lot earlier in June, and Dr. Harrington and all our hustle and bustle, we never did have a conversation about when is graduation. And so the back page of the calendar, it's listed as June 7th. With the current statute for last day of school for seniors, we can move that back to May 31st. So the request tonight is let's move it back to May 31st, be within the statutory regulations and continue with the consistency that we've had for many, many years. It was an oversight on our part to change it prior to that. I don't feel it would take a vote if it was on the first page and it was colored or highlighted. I would ask for a vote, but just a consensus would be fine at this point in time, so we can move ahead, if you're ready to do that.
I don't personally don't have any concerns about that, Dean or Stacy.
It's pretty typical of a time frame. But
It is.
Yeah,
I like it better.
What do you think?
We have Jay's voting.
I think there's some consensus there. I think that'll be
All
fine.
right, perfect, thank you.
Got it.
And that brings me to the end of the superintendent's update.
Perfect. Then we went over a lot of information. I just want to give, we kind of informally asked questions along the way, but Dina or Stacy or Jay had questions or comments about any of that information. You don't have to, but just, good. I just want to say, I think the busing's gone extremely well. If anything, I think maybe like D-Bus was a little anxious on this first day of school. With the construction in town and potentially buses were running a little too early. I think some families got caught by surprise that the bus was running early. I think everyone's kind of figured it out by now, but that seems to be going super smooth. Heard from a lot of folks, even those that said, hey, this start time thing isn't going to make a big difference to my family. I can't believe you guys are spending that money. Actually had people reach out to say it's one of the best things we've ever done. So thank you to those that are sharing that, because it does mean something to us. And then I also just want to say or echo just the congratulations on that number 6 ranking. You kind of just said that in passing. I think maybe we're getting a little used to being on that list, but that's, in my opinion, that's a big deal. I've had other people say, look at the metrics they're using. And if there is a list, I think we want to be on that list. It's test scores, it's class sizes, it's professional, the evaluation of the staff. Graduation rates and test scores. So I think those are all metrics in which the school committee would feel that, we want to be firing on all cylinders there. And, not just the high school, but the middle school and the lower elementary schools, it starts from the bottom up. So congratulations to everybody involved. You got it. Next, we will move on to the item number 2, which is the school principal update. School principals are going to give a brief update on the school reopenings.
Michelle,
Looks like Michelle
ready to go?
would like to go first.
Everyone,
Hello.
thank you, Jay, for sharing. That was a great start to the year. I do want to echo, although there was some financial impact from that busing, it is quite wonderful. Shaker Lane's buses have usually never arrived on time. They are on time. At the end of the day, it usually was at least 10 minutes after dismissal that all the buses were there, 10 minutes after that they were there. They're leaving within 5 to 10 minutes. So I have to say, Ms. Deacon's very happy. She's in charge of buses, so I know I'm saying that for her. We have had a great start to the year. I think, Ms. Deacon, the staff and I all said, wow, this kind of feels like old times. So it's been a good start. I think you'll hear the same thing from some of the other principals. Our back to school night has been great. This year, there was some feedback from families last year that they wanted unified arts to be offered at a different time than the classroom teachers. So we did that, and I think our new PE teacher and our new music teachers that said they had about 40 parents stop by at their unified arts one. So their time was separate. That was great. Next week, we have the 1st and 2nd grade back to school night. Our preschoolers came in. They're doing fantastic. We have lots of new staff this year. I'm just impressed with their ability to assimilate into the school. I'm not sure if you want to hear anything else more specific, but I feel overall it's been probably the best start in quite a few years. So it's good to have that feeling that we're getting stuff accomplished, getting stuff done. Routines are already set in place. The teachers amaze me with the stuff that they're able to do with the kids just, 9-10 days in. Any questions for Shaker Lane?
No,
I
that's
had a quick question about the open houses, because I've gone to the kindergarten one, which was wonderful, because we were able to go to all the special classes and then able to meet the teachers. Is that the same for all of the classes this year, or?
So
For all the grades.
So the unified arts was offered at a time last week.
Yep.
But I can't have them come back again.
Yep.
So it would have been, if you were a 1st grade parent or 2nd grade parent, you would have had to go last week to see unified arts. And
Okay.
then this coming week to see 1st and 2nd grade, just contractually, I can't have them come out 2 nights.
Okay. And for each of the classes, are they doing the same thing too? We can go into each of the classrooms
Yes.
and meet the teacher, perfect.
Yeah.
Because I think last year was all a big meeting in the cafeteria, which we said no one was really into, so I'm glad that's changed for everyone.
Yeah, first grade did reflect on that and said, it wasn't probably the most advantageous way to approach that night. So they are going right into the classrooms.
Correct.
Yes, and it is an adult only event, if possible. We know that sometimes it's not possible. It just makes for better conversation with the parents.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, thanks.
Mrs. Temple.
Temple.
So I sort of echo what everyone said. We were, with the short summer, we weren't really sure how orientations were gonna go. We had 3 orientations in the 2 weeks leading up to school, and we were mobbed with people, so we were happy about that. We had a morning, an afternoon, and an evening, and we had lots of people come, and then we had a supply drop out. And even with the construction and all of that, we had lots of people come, so that was really great. The kids were excited and enthusiastic about coming back to school, even though our summer felt really short. I was sweating it out with Steve because our hard top area was a pile of burn-in, like the day before school started, but
We got it done.
it happened. We had a brand new hard top area, and they were, when I was going home the night before school was starting, fresh wood chips were being delivered. So our kids met on the first day of school, our hard top area, and met their teachers with music playing. It was really great. I just want to repeat what was said earlier. We only had 2 custodians working for most of the summer at Russell Street, and our school is beautiful. With not just the cleaning, but additional projects, our stairs got painted and things like that. It's really, they went above and beyond, and we have given them shout outs multiple times. But certainly it's worthy here. I would also shout out to Eric and Fernando, when it was hot and we were having a hard time regulating, not as hard as some other places, but regulating temperatures in the building. They're spot on in helping. It's amazing how quickly kids get back to a new routine. 2 days into school, everyone knows where they're going, even 3rd graders, they know where everything is. So that has been really wonderful. I think we had a lot of positive feedback about the new schedule starting in August, and having kids and teachers come back to 2 short weeks before we have a full week was really a nice way to ease in, heat wave included. It is, and I was just reflecting as I was sitting back there, we're only 11 days in, and at Russell Street, we had a 911 call on the first day of school. We had the fire drill, we had indoor recess because of a heat wave, and we had buses come after 5:30 one day. So it's all in 11 days. So I feel like if we can manage that, we'll be good for the rest of the year. I will say it was, I appreciate your comment about we're watching 2 buses worth of kids running in, send an email, run back out. I mentioned in our admin meeting the other day, and shout out to the Russell Street staff, who I had multiple staff members stay with me until about 10 of 6, making sure that we had enough coverage for the kids. Some of the kids, including your son, was there for so long that they started cheering for the field hockey game. They were watching the screen and lined up on the sidewalk and cheering for field hockey, which I have a great video of that. It was wonderful. And then had 2 students returned at 6 o'clock because the bus couldn't make it to their home. So it was a late night, but I had people hang behind and help. So it has been really a wonderful 11 days. We did have open house tonight with open house and with every possible space filled with soccer tonight. There's cars all over the place, but we had a lovely turnout. A lot of people. We've done about 30 query forms tonight before I made my way over here. So we've had a wonderful start for the school year. Anything we did, I will go back and talk about. I think we had at Russell Street the biggest challenge with buses. And not D-bus was absolutely wonderful. I think the challenge was that there was a 10-minute window between pickup at Russell Street and pickup at Shaker Lane. And we sort of worked out, Michelle and I worked out together a couple of different options. The we discussed the first option with D-Bus. They didn't want to try it on the first day, so that was challenging. So we roughed it out for 2 days, and then Renee from D-Bus came over and saw how it was working. So ultimately, we identified 16 families that go from Russell Street to Shaker Lane every single day. So they come in as wave one. They come in front of the buses. They line up right in front of the school. They have signage for the car. Their children know that they're wave one. So we call wave one right at the 3:10 dismissal. Those students come out getting cars immediately. Those 16 cars leave and make their way to Shaker Lane, and the buses come in right after. So we had one bus from bus 5 that was pretty late, but D-Bus had reorganized that. So now we have all 7 buses almost at the same time coming in the afternoon. So we are down to within the 15 minutes that we planned, which is, we were well beyond that for the first couple of days, but now in the morning and in the afternoon, within 14-15 minutes, everybody's ready to go. Anything specific?
Does the wave one, that was some creative thinking, does that seem to solve the problem? Are those families getting to Shaker Lane in time where they're not
Yeah.
back of the pack every?
Yeah, so
Good.
I dismissed wave one first, and then you dismissed them last, I think, at yours, so it just opened up that window of time. And people are getting across town. I think when the road is paved, it will be even faster for people to get across.
Right, they won't have to go 5 miles an hour down Brook
Correct.
Street.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
So, to tag on to that, so, is that something we also need to keep an eye out as more construction is happening in town? It is a window that is very variable for traffic coming between the 2 schools. So that's something we'll have to really keep an eye
yeah,
out for.
and one of the things that Michelle and I have talked about too, just the other day is that this may, right now, we know that there are 16 identified families that have kids in both places, and they've made a commitment to drive them. That may change as kids, go to do a winter activity or something like that. And so that would be something that, we'll keep monitoring as we move through. It won't be a viable situation if suddenly we have 40 cars in wave one. So we're really making sure that it's, it's not an occasional ask people that are an occasional pickup like that to do something a little bit different, but we're trying to keep wave one the consistent. But if it becomes, in the spring, I'm gonna pick up at Russell Street and Shaker Lane every day, and we'll add that car to wave one.
Thanks for working through that.
And I know it wasn't intentional, but if we could, Kelly had addressed this before, but like to schedule a back to school night on a school committee night, if we can try to avoid that going forward.
It was funny, I was talking to Kelly on the phone last night, and then I talked to some other people, because I was the one that specifically said when we were doing our calendar, we have to stay away from Thursdays. And I don't know if anybody else remembered, but I know specifically, it wasn't anything that we selected. I don't know how it felt.
I just, let the record show that we'll try to avoid that going forward.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
We're trying to have all the back to school evenings as soon as we can when they start, because that's when they're the most meaningful. It's hard to juggle. One thing we'll be sure to look at next year is if somebody does have to end up on a school committee night, it'll probably be high school. Because there's a little more flexibility there.
Yeah, we want to be aware of not having the families of the younger kids be out twice in the same week.
Mm.
And I think that was part of our conversation too.
But maybe we can avoid it next year entirely. We'll take a look at it.
See what we can do. Okay, thank you very much.
Jason Everhart.
Hello, everyone. Report from the middle school. It has been a fantastic start to the year. 10, 11 days in, I couldn't have scripted it any better. Everything seems to click from within 2 days, the bus routes, the drop off and the dismissal, we're great. The kids have picked up on a schedule. We had a pretty significant schedule change over the summer. And the kids were on it within a day and a half. I think it's the adults who are still like, I don't know what to do, but they're getting it. The kids seem, it's been remarkably quiet, almost eerie waiting for the other shoe to drop. Given the last few years, you go in every day and it's running like a school should. It's wonderful to see. A number of staff have commented on just the vibe being so much better this year. I think this is like the first year we can really look at a fresh start, because I think there was just holdover from every other year. And I think this one collectively, we all view as a fresh start. So the attitudes are great, the work is great, we have, wonderful things coming up. So I couldn't be happier with the start to the year. We've implemented cell phone policy at lunch, so now we have the sixth graders doing the same thing, so now it's 6 and 7 who have none of that, so we're starting to see the benefits carrying through. We don't have to have the arguments because the seventh graders are so well trained, right? It's making it so like we're continuing things that we started last year, and they're having a great effect this year. So we look forward to continuing those traditions, building some new ones. Yeah, I'm thrilled. It's been wonderful.
We think the vibe is better because people are sleeping.
I was worried about the short summer, but people coming back like a little bit frazzled. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, for the middle school, the half-hour difference, certainly does play a role in that. I think we've reached that point of all the stuff that COVID and the pandemic years and a couple of years after. You just never knew what you were walking into that day. And I think this is the first time in a long time where we don't have that worry. Like the routines are set. Our staff is veteran. We hardly lost anybody at the end of last year. So we're coming back with people who we're not having to retrain and start over again. So I'm not sure. I don't know what to attribute it to fully. It's probably a combination of things, and that'd be one of them. But it's paying off in the middle school.
Do you have any feedback on having that extra, the kids having that extra 30 minutes? Have you heard from like students or teachers about that later start time?
No, I haven't heard anything from students. I think this is different for them because either way, like the incoming sixth graders, we just start earlier than they used to. So
yeah.
I think that's all different for them. I'm not even sure if middle schools really notice the difference when it comes to time. I haven't had a chance to talk to staff about it. Everybody seems chipper when they walk through the door, so I'm going to assume that that's a result of having a little bit of extra time. But it's something we'll certainly talk about in the coming days now that we're in a routine, to see how does that extra half an hour play into people's time in the morning, how they're feeling about it when they show up and their ability to do their job with that extra little bit of time. And we're still getting out pretty early. That's something we didn't lose too. So there's a nice balance there.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I had the pleasure of going to the back to school night. I think that went awesome. And like, with the new schedule and the walking around from different rooms, I think like all the parents were like, wow, this is pretty cool. I'm in 3 or 4 or 5 different rooms throughout the thing. So, I mean, it went great. I was very impressed with how the night went and staff, and it was just.
Our staff does a great
Awesome.
job of planning everything,
Mhm.
especially our sixth grade team just does a fantastic job of planning everything down to the minute. We had a larger than expected turnout. Honestly, I think I said this that night. I expected it to have half of what we had between the weather and just everything else. We had quite a few people, and it was great to see people in the hallways and moving around. Yeah, I thought the night had a very joyous feel to it.
Sure did.
People were excited, trying to get them ramped up in the beginning, and it just seemed to kind of carry over and throughout the night. Everybody seemed to really enjoy it. Nothing but wonderful feedback as the night went on. So we're gonna keep that momentum rolling.
Good job.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Hart.
Well, I'm happy to share the good news that my colleagues have already presented. It really is an incredibly positive start to the school year. Just the smiling faces of the kids and staff, the building is bustling with energy. And I would echo what was said earlier, this is one of the best starts that we've had in years, for sure, absolutely is. And I would say even in my long time in Littleton, it's one of the best starts. But certainly in comparison to over the last 5 years, it's all off to a great start. We had a really successful freshman orientation for incoming 9th graders as well as the new students. August, and that was a good way to welcome them, create that feeling of connection. Great back to school night last Thursday. That went super, and lots of good feedback about that. We had a fun and informative club fair to really promote a sense of belonging and connection in the school. It's the first time we've done this in a long time, and it was the best one. And that, Jay, you were there, we were talking about it earlier today. The kids were excited to present about their clubs, sign up new members. But I think we'll have really strong co-curricular participation this year, more so in the past because of this club fair. And I want to give a shout out and thanks to relatively new guidance counselor Jennifer He, who obtained a grant to fund this club fair and get all kinds of extra stuff to really make it look spectacular. And she did a wonderful job facilitating, coordinating the whole thing. The other thing that was said by some of my colleagues is the new staff. We have a lot of new staff at the high school this year because of retirements. And, people just moving on, but most of the people retirements and the new staff have already been very impressive. And they, are off to a great start. So I've been impressed by them already. We have a new advisory curriculum this year, and that's the social emotional learning curriculum called Character Strong. We had professional development on this yesterday, and it starts with the Monday advisory this coming Monday, September 18th. So we're excited about that. Moving forward, there's a future school committee presentation on the calendar for us to explain that all to you, give you an update about how it's going. And we're looking forward to the roof repairs being completed as soon as possible. I think it's going to take.
It stops raining long enough.
I think it's going to take probably at least another 4 to 5 weeks, when I understand, working over the administrative wing. And I think that, as well as the band room, that whole area, that section of the building, they've been working all summer. So we have lots of accompanying noise and ruckus on top of us, so as we work to the administrative lots. But it's worth waiting for. It's been a long time coming, so we're looking for that to be completed. I do think we haven't had a lot of Stacey, to your question really about I think you're asking about the school start time. We haven't collected any formal feedback on that yet, but just the general vibe when I'm up there greeting the kids and seeing the parents at drop off. I've been joking with a lot of kids who would be notoriously, 5-10 minutes late, at 7:45. They used to have to be there at 7:45. So I said, if this was last year, you'd be late. Now you're early. And they burst out laughing and smiling. So that's definitely just qualitative information just over the last 10 days that I've noticed, where kids are smiling that they have this extra time. But we'll see how it fares out. And I know there was a fair amount, there were different opinions about whether or not we should do it. And we'll see in time if it was worth it. The bell schedule, we had a refined bell schedule this year. That seems to have gone over really well. The shorter blocks, Jay, I think are, rather than having it in class for like 80 minutes, you're in there for 60. The flex block is working well. So we continue to finesse and refine the spell schedule. I think we've found a really good spot right now. The earlier start time in August, that's probably the best thing so far in terms of feedback. People really saying that was great to have those days back before Labor Day. Get a lot of the routines, get a lot of the staff started with ice-breaking activities to make connections in classrooms. Some of them spent 2 days just building community in the room. And then we came back after Labor Day, hit the ground running, launched right into full-fledged academics. So really, again, just to sum it up, same as everybody else, great start to school.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say to all of the principals, it was a short interview, it was a short summer this year. I know we all felt it, the kids all felt it, so I really appreciate you guys hitting the ground running despite having, a few less weeks than I think we usually have. We appreciate you guys. It was a seamless start to the school, so appreciate you being patient with our new schedule.
We did notice the shorter summer.
Yes.
But we're ready.
Snuck up with us.
Yeah.
I'm just glad the heat wave was the second week, not the first week, because otherwise it would have been all our fault. All right, so the next item on the agenda is the high school tennis courts. Jen had to step out because of back to school night. She really wanted to be there for a portion of that evening, so I'm just gonna table that. I'm gonna slide that down the agenda just a little bit, if that's okay. I see some people in the audience that are here for that topic. So we'll take things a little out of order to see if Jen can make it back in time for that, since she is our Park and Rec subcommittee person. So we'll move on to item number 4, which is the Caregiver Connection Series. Dr. Clenchy, Elizabeth Steele, and Lynn Snow will share information about the 2023-2024 Caregiver Connection Series.
We're really excited about the change that we're making. We met this summer and we talked about the connections evening that we've had. I mean, it was very successful, but then we thought it might be better to spread this out a little bit over the year. So we have a pamphlet that we created. I'm going to turn it over to Beth and Lynn in a minute here, because they they really deserve the credit for finding the guest speakers and aligning the topics throughout the year. But I'm excited about this because it gives our families that opportunity to spend some time on one area rather than spending an evening with us and covering 5 or 10 areas. So, ladies.
Awesome, and I pulled up Lynn Snow here, because this is really a collaborative approach this year for our Connection Speaker Series. So as Dr. Funchi said, we reviewed kind of the 2 that we've done previously, what worked well, what could improve upon. And then an idea that we had was to spread it out throughout the school year. So we have already scheduled 5, all of those dates are Tuesdays. We tried to go for consistency for the ease of remembering these items. So they're all Tuesdays, they're all at 6 o'clock. They are in 2 different locations between the middle school and the high school. And then the speakers, we really focused kind of on the topics, right? What are topics that we have really been talking about, we want more information on, or areas that we're kind of concerned about and we want to be learning more about and learning as a community. And so those are the topics listed there. And the individuals are either individuals that we have collaborated with previously, maybe for staff PD, or people that we have heard ourselves speak. So that's kind of where we went with picking specific speakers.
We really wanted to focus and stay in alignment with really like the goals and the vision of the district and focus on the topics that really are relevant at this moment. And we really wanted to focus on current topics that are impacting families and community.
We're happy to answer any questions, but we would also love just to publicize this out. And so sharing in any way, shape, or form would be wonderful. Our first one is October 3rd, which it felt far away, and then all of a sudden we're scheduled not far away at all, actually. So, so we'll be sharing this information. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Steve, we're gonna take you next because Jen said she's on her way. So, business manager Steve Mark will give a financial update. This information on the there's one slide in the packet for this.
Yeah, let me get the packet slide and then I'll share it.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a slide. This is our standard slide that we've been using for a couple of years. It's the cost center summary report. Again, beginning of the year is not a lot of news here. Let me address the obvious, the minus $15,000 deficit that shows in the encumbrances. And to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure what it is. I'm looking into it. Well, so let me, but this is why I want to explain. We upgraded to a new version of our financial software, and there are some settings that we're still tweaking and working out from the old system to the new one. And I think this is one of those things that we need to go tweak and fix, and that will solve the issue. I think this is related to a purchase order that was open. We opened it at last year, and those monies carry forward, those encumbrances carry forward, and we closed it this year. And it's showing up here. But the money that we carried forward isn't. So I think there's a setting I need to get with the town finance director and the software people and figure out what that setting is that we need to fix within the Munis software. But that's what it is. And it's not a concern. It's not like something's wrong or something. It's known. We just need to fix this financial software so it's accurate and it's reporting in the timely manner. So that's what that is. But again, September, this is through the end of August. Teacher salaries haven't hit here. Bus transportation hasn't hit any of these expense lines yet. Those will be coming obviously as we move through the year. So again, standard format, no news, no bad news at this point in time. Be glad to answer questions.
To support what Steve's saying, we have 2 new people in our business office. We're doing a wonderful job. As they're learning their roles, we had a massive overhaul of Munis, which is the accounting program for the town, and it just doesn't work the same way.
Yeah, not only was it new chart of accounts, but new software, new version of the software, and they changed the whole look and feel of it. So it's kind of a perfect storm of everything kind of hitting at once. So I do apologize for it, but we'll figure it out and get it fixed. And I don't, again, it's nothing wrong. It's not like there's something wrong with it. I think it's just a little timing issue. That's all that is.
Sounds good. Just do me a favor, next meeting, maybe let's explain the 15 grand. I get that it's showing up on the report and we gotta figure it out, so. All is good, but let's get the explanation next
Yep,
time.
I will.
We can. Make sense of that. Stacy or Bino, do you have any questions on the budget?
Yeah.
A little early in the year to have things be going wrong, so we're in good shape.
Yep.
All right, so Jen is on her way back, but we're run out of delay tactics here, so we'll move on to the high school tennis courts project. The school committee received a letter from rec. Kelly, I can introduce this topic, or you could introduce the topic. How would you like to do that?
Well, we do have Park and Rec here. I don't want to put you guys on the spot either. I mean, if you'd like us to talk about it, that's fine, but if you'd like to do a brief overview, that's up to you.
We love being on the spot.
Okay, so then I'll just preface this by saying that I sent, you've been making the round, so I sent the FinCom committee meeting, the select board meeting, and the CBC meeting
Yeah.
to the other school committee members with the minutes marked, so they knew what to watch.
Okay,
We studied
that
hard.
was very helpful. Thank you.
So-
So we, yeah, we know what's going on.
I think we're all pretty up to date on this topic, but if you want to give us a quick overview,
What questions do you have?
Yeah, Cliff notes.
Tim,
All right, how's everybody doing? Tim Houski, Assistant Director, Park and Rec. Alicia's here tonight as well. So since everybody's already pretty much up to speed, just to kind of bring everybody up to where we're at tonight. So as you may know, this project was deemed CPC eligible, as paperwork was put through. We've been talking about the tennis courts for a considerable amount of time, knowing that the tennis courts at the current town hall site will eventually be demolished for the new senior center going into place. We have talked in great detail with different parties about the deficiencies at the Weber property tennis courts that were put in, with the different things that we come across there. And the opportunity that currently exists at the Littleton High School, probably being the best site after the Cooper property site was passed over to renovate tennis courts. So what we're looking for now is really just a couple questions geared towards the school committee. Number one being to look to have a vote put forth on if you are in support of this article to go on the town warrant and the project to move forward. Number two, the conversation that the TPC was looking for was if the school committee could take a stance on contribution towards the project, or if they were interested in possibly reparceling, designating the parcel that the tennis court sit on, to take it out of school property and to put it back into care and custody of the town of Littleton. And then it would become similar to like maintenance plans like we do on the green space and other facilities that we have. Really, anytime the CPC does these projects, what they're looking for is not only do they want to see the project get completed, but they also want to see what is that maintenance going to look like. So all the parties who are essentially requesting it or buying into the project, how is it going to, really be upkept for the next 30 years? So we make sure that we're wisely spending the money and we have a plan forth to make these facilities last as long as they possibly can for the town. So without, anything else, if there are any questions, please let us know, but I'll turn it over to you guys with just for conversation to see if you guys are in support, and also to have the discussion on would you guys be willing to make a contribution, or would you guys prefer that parcel possibly be rezoned over from school property? So just to fulfill the question you can see that.
I have a question, and I did watch some of the other presentations to the other groups in town about this. Are you saying that it's a foregone conclusion that if the school can't pick up some of the budget or some of the costs, that then it would have to be parceled and given to the town?
No, I don't think that that's a foregone conclusion at all. The question was from the CPC commission, and Alicia was actually part of those meetings, much more than I was. They just want to know exactly where the support's coming from and what since obviously the school uses a large portion of the tennis court with school communities and even at the town hall courts and the site that it was as well, highway maintains things like that. They just wanted to know what was the opportunity that you guys are willing to present as well towards the project.
So one of the ways that CPC looks at some of those projects is they want all stakeholders to have some skin in the game, you know, to use that phrase. So for example, we're also at the same time looking to be able to put lights on Kerper Field. So Light and Water they've donated 200,000 to CPC. And they will also be digging trenches for the conduit to go in for an electrician to come run those lines. So they know that like Light and Water, that's their property, and that they're really committed to making that happen. So for CPC, they're always looking for any of the stakeholders involved to really put some sort of commitment to that project.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I guess my questions are, when this was on the November 2022 warrant, the price tag of the project was roughly 1.1,
Correct.
and that was for 2 courts.
4.
It was gonna be, you were gonna put 4 in there?
There was actually more than that. There were.
I thought you were just doing 2 for 2, so that was an assumption on my part.
Yeah, so there were actually 4 tennis courts and there were 4 pickleball courts.
Okay. All right, what would, I guess the underlying question is, what was going to be the source of funding for that project? You know,
You mean for the maintenance for that moving forward?
just the $1.1 million price tag.
Right, so that was something that we would go through CPC. We could also potentially ask for those funds in capital.
But when it was tagged as a warrant at town meeting, it was
Right.
gonna be authorization to borrow.
Yeah, essentially,
There was.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Or free cash.
they usually do some sort of combination between the two. Yeah,
And at the finance committee meeting, it was suggested, now the assumed price tag is $734. CPC approved. If I understood the meeting correctly, they have the money to fund the project in its entirety. But the suggested source of funding would likely be a borrowing plan over 10 years or something like that.
so I don't believe they have the full amount. I think there's probably about like 600,000-ish in there, but the smart thing to do, especially for CPC, would be to do a borrowing plan so that that would be a smaller amount over time that they'd be paying. It wouldn't just empty the coffers in that
Okay.
account.
Gotcha.
One of my questions were, if we transfer it over to the town
Mhm.
entirely, because obviously Park and Rec, you guys, I mean, those tennis courts are being used all the time. I see people in there all the time. And then obviously in the spring, students are going to have priority over the courts.
Mhm.
If we transfer it over to the town, does that mean the town is 100% responsible financially and physically for the maintenance of those courts?
Yeah.
So how will you guys be working with the athletic director to ensure that they're being maintained, not only to the standards of what we need for the town, but also for the students, and for competition for the students?
Yeah, so that's something that we definitely have on a maintenance plan. Our basketball courts at 300 King, that's something that we're gonna get resurfaced over this next year. So we do add those into our capital requests every financial year that we go through. And we do pay attention to what the company tells us as far as these should be resurfaced at this time, or if it's something that needs work sooner than later, we are gonna be cognizant of that. And we also have the assistance of the highways park staff, and they take excellent care of, they're sort of, for right now, taking care of the tennis courts that are at town hall. So they will go out there often, especially in this type of weather where we have a lot of debris, and we'll, use leaf blowers and clean off the areas, get rid of poison ivy, things like that.
I want to give Superintendent Clenching and Business Manager Steve Mark a chance to weigh in, but my question, I suppose, is we own 2, currently you own 2.
Yeah.
Currently, we take care of ours, you take care of yours. We run a varsity and JV program, so I think it makes sense for us to maintain ownership of our courts. And then have an agreement, obviously, where we share them with the town, because our season's so short, but we need them when we need them, and otherwise, I'm sure they use them for physical education class as well for a short period of time, but then most of the year probably not there. I'm just wondering if perhaps we would entertain the idea of, since they're gonna be on school property, the school department still owns the courts, but maybe we could enter into a. Like a memorandum of understanding about maintenance. I mean, we're essentially funding the maintenance of the courts through the same source, which is taxpayer dollars. So whether or not we ask the town for the money, or you ask the town for the money, or we both agree that. You know, every so often we each ask for half of the budget to maintain the courts.
Right.
We would kind of accomplish the same thing. And I'm just kind of tossing that idea out there
Yeah.
that. Since we're gonna be sharing them, we're gonna need to have an understanding of who's gonna take care of them. I think that's probably one of the most important things. And. If it's us, we're gonna ask the taxpayers. If it's you guys, you're gonna ask the taxpayers. It's,
This is not a request of Parks and Recreation. This
Yeah.
is a request of CPC that again wants that buy-in, that this is something that, you know, it's not just a freebie. Thanks a lot. It's a like, you know, we're working together as a group that this is gonna be a community preservation
sure,
project.
I think the biggest thing to keep in mind, is just, we currently have that structure with the green space.
Right.
So regardless of how the outcome came, it would really be no different than how we treat the meeting. With all of
Schools
us.
always have the priority over anything else in town.
We already, we have that structure with green space, we have that structure with alumni field, we have that structure with the gymnasiums, you know, the hierarchy is essentially, you know, school, park and rec. In-town teams with 80% kids who are at least Littleton
Mhm.
and then out of town and, you know, renters. So that it already exists. It's not something that would need to be reinvented and something that, you know, we follow for everything else. So that's not a hard model to fit anything into.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of communication between the athletic director and Park and Rec when it comes to scheduling fields and tennis courts and all that kind of, so that already exists and it's a good working relationship right now.
You know, first of all, thank you, Alicia, and your team for putting in the many hours that you did to come up with a proposal and get support from CPC.
Yeah.
A couple of things that come to my mind. The ownership of our tennis courts and the fact that they're on their land is I guess it's something that I take seriously, and I don't want to necessarily have another entity like CPC say, well, you need to donate money. So one way you can do that, since this school committee and I as a superintendent really can't contribute to CPC. But there are a number of things that are left out that you and I had actually talked to when we met. And I'd like to start with the fact that we have 2 tennis courts that you're taking care of now. And as a result of a project that's happening in town, they're being eliminated. So I feel very strongly that this conversation needs to be a broader conversation with the town, and the select board need to be at the table with us as well. You didn't cause that, we didn't cause that, and I feel strongly that there needs to be some realization and recognition that there needs to be some type of contribution or some type of way to help us through this project. The opportunity to do this is fantastic. I mean, we've been wanting to do this for a long time, but I just want to be cautious of promising money to a group when the town already contributes to the CPC on a yearly basis. In fact, they had a recent meeting, from what I understand that spoke to the contributions moving forward. So I don't see this as a driving force to change land titles, and that would be the select board and the school committee that would have that conversation anyway. We don't want to. I mean, I don't want to do anything to impede the progress of this project, because my understanding is CBC is ready to move forward in this, but I just don't think that's necessary at this point in time. There are many ways that we can do this. I don't have a dollar value in terms of what are they looking for contribution. I think that would be very helpful. Are they looking for the full amount of the project? They're looking for 50% or 25%. We do realize our courts are in need of repair, and we need to factor that into what we would like to do as a school committee. But it certainly, our repairs on our tennis courts really doesn't come to that much money, but we realize we're gaining 2 courts and we need to take that into consideration. So I think from a monetary point of view, I'm still not in a good spot in terms of who's going to contribute what to meet the needs of the CPC. And I think it's important that conversation happen. What are those expectations? It's like going out and buying a car and you're signed on the dotted line and you look down on the piece of paper and you see that you have $12,000 more of options that you really didn't think you have.
Yeah.
And we're the stewards of making sure that the money goes as far as it possibly can, and we're being cautious before we enter into deals or a partnership until we have all the information that we need to make a good decision.
From what I gathered at watching the meetings, this question was sort of posed, well, the school department has 2, now they'd be getting 4, gee, why don't you ask the schools if they can treat?
Right.
And it was quickly realized that budgeting had been done, and this is not a project that was part of our budget, so therefore, the number that we have for this is 0.
Yeah, and I expressed that to them from the beginning.
Now, Steve, Mark, and the budget subcommittee, every year we get together and we look at capital projects, and we had a conversation about court resurfacing. So this is something that is part of our ongoing capital request. Every couple of years, we look at our facilities and say, where do we need to spread the dollars around? And obviously, if we end up with brand new courts, that's awesome. But it's also a liability in a couple of years that they're going to need to be resurfaced or reconditioned, or there's going to be maintenance and upkeep. So from where I stand on, I think that it is an awesome opportunity. Currently, I think we probably bus kids, or at least have to bring JV athletes to your 2 courts. So that's having sort of all 4 courts at one place is nice. I was also thinking, like, currently, if you're in town and you go to the 2 courts and the 2 courts are being used, if we had 4 courts in one space, you don't have to drive to the other location. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to move forward with the project with the understanding that the school department isn't going to contribute to the project, but we would certainly look to care for the courts in the same fashion that we care for our own courts now. And we would likely look to partner with you folks on that going forward, since you're going to use the courts and we're going to use the courts, and we can come to an agreement as to how we're going to fundraise to perform the maintenance on it.
Right, and over the years, it's been a combination of the maintenance for crack repair and line repainting and painting has been a combination of capital money, and then if it's a small repair, we can do some of those small repairs out of the operational budget. So it's been a combination of both.
I think one of the things too that we had spoken about very briefly, but I don't think anybody's really looking for a specific dollar amount, because obviously we had brought up in the conversation that, we set budgets ahead of time, but in looking forward and understanding that this project's coming down in the future, I think the big concern is this does take almost all of what's left in the CPC recreation bucket. And, one of the suggestions that was kind of out there in one of our meetings was, moving forward, especially with the Saker Lane project, we wouldn't necessarily be in a tennis court situation if we had planned ahead of time and said, hey, we have this project coming on board. We need to set aside X number, $100,000 to replace this tennis courts. And I think coming down the pike with the Shaker Lane project, we may be in the same situation when it comes to softball fields, baseball fields, and everything else. So when we look at CPC and funding, there might be an opportunity to say, okay, we were able to fund this with CPC funds, and we were able to accomplish something that was both beneficial to the town and the school for our high school tennis players. But in the future, as we look into our Shaker Lane project, we are going to be more fiscally responsible. We're going to be better at planning, and maybe that number for CPC, rather than funding a new baseball field to be built or temporary fields to be built in the interim, depending on how that project actually comes through, that could be the solution to, for right now, to say, we are going to look at that in the future. And it is monies that you might have to lay out, but that's an opportunity for the school committee to say, as part of this project, we're going to take that step and plan that out. So that would be one of my suggestions that might be a good answer in this particular situation. Since CPC funds are available in the recreation bucket, we're doing things that benefit, both parties, and baseball and softball fields would be the exact same thing once that project comes down the line.
Sure. that I would love to collaborate, and I know youth baseball and softball would as well.
Yeah.
On getting ahead of the Shaker Lane project so that we had a field plan at the same time that we're coming up with the school plan.
Yeah, because
Because there's an opportunity there to really improve our field space in town.
Yeah, because the lights at Kerper are the same kind of thing. Had we been more proactive in planning the high school fields going offline with something like putting lights on Kerper, so we extended the playing hours, especially in the fall. You know, we are able to do things rather than play catch up and say, hey, where are we gonna put everybody? You know, Miss Charles back to Temple's back to school night is filled with cars because we have every soccer player and everybody there. So those are the opportunities we have, and you know, I think looking forward, that could be a viable solution to say, hey, we are gonna look for this in the future. Since we aren't gonna have any CPC funds, because we're hoping to build these tennis courts.
Is there will there be a plan, since we could be partnering with the school and Park and Rec for the needs for the courts? When it comes to construction, we can prioritize doing that around the tennis season so that those sports aren't disrupted.
Right, and that's one of the components in the letter that I had written, the memo, is that we have a great working relationship with Mike Lynn. So that's something we would want to make sure that we're able to allow them to have an operational season. At that point into spring, I think those other courts are going to be shut down. So they would most likely be using the Weber ones, which I know he's not very fond of. Neither are we.
Yeah.
So yes, we would assist him the best that we could and make sure that we get that building time frame worked out with him.
Yeah, the other piece for the construction piece is going to fall town meeting and having this approved is best case scenario.
Yeah.
So not only do we get the spring season in, and yes, there might have to be some traveling that happens just to accommodate only having 2 fields for the spring. But a lot of this, a lot of the lifespan of this tennis court is very temperature dependent. So doing this project in the summer is ideal because we need temperatures that are never going to go below 50 degrees in order to get the substrate and all of the concrete and the right stuff set up. That's what's actually going to get us our 25 to 30 year lifetime out of the surface before we have to maintain it. You know, other site work can be done in the fall and time where, you know, hopefully we'll be done then by fall season. We don't have to worry about anything. Whatever prep work, you know, could be done ahead of time so that we are ready. You know, spring season thing can be done around the courts, so the courts are still usable. But the minute that, you know, spring season is over and there's no impact to busing or schools or anything like that, we could definitely start the project. Just, you know, so everybody is aware, the one item that we did talk about is the bus parking, especially that takes place in that parking lot, would be something that would need to be dealt with, but that's a, you know, solution that's pretty easily solved, we think.
Yeah.
And just so clear, so for the timeline, this really needs to go to town meeting this fall, because if it doesn't go this fall, then we would be out potentially those 2 extra courts another year after that, because we're gonna be wanting to wait for that next summer.
Right, because you would then want to have the fall season, and at
Right.
that point, you want to have the conditions
Right,
that would be suggested by the contractors to be able to warranty the courts.
so it needs to be done this summer, otherwise we have to wait. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I mean, you know, thank you again so much for doing all the work on this. And I'd like to echo what Steve said earlier. I mean, we really enjoy our partnership with
Yeah.
Park and Rec, and you know, we both value what we do in our community, and we're both working with the students in our community. So thank you very much for all that you do and your willingness to always work with us for the best outcome that we can possibly hope for.
Yeah. Just the one last thing, if you guys are able to take a vote to support the project being built on school property tonight, that will allow us to go to town meeting. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Justin, I did send you a good motion. I was gonna hand you a piece of paper, but then I quickly realized I'm left-handed, the only person that can really read my writing is Dorothy and myself, so.
I'm all lefty. I might be able to
Oh,
read it. So,
that's true.
so no further questions or discussion. I can make a motion. So I move to approve the tennis court project presented by Park and Rec to renovate the high school tennis courts from 2 courts to 4 courts using funds from the Community Preservation Fund.
I second the motion.
Motion made and seconded by Ms. Gold. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye, opposed, none, we can mark that unanimous. You guys can continue down this path. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Yes, thank you.
We're excited about the partnership. I think having 4 courts where we can use 4 courts and have 4 courts on the same place is just an awesome idea.
I agree.
So thank you so much.
Thank you guys for your time tonight.
Thank you.
They've been working hard on that, so I'm glad.
Yes, great job.
We're making rounds.
They have been. All right, so this is our second opportunity for interested citizens. Take a brief pause to see if anyone questions, concerns, comments. Showing none, we will move on. We'll wrap up with our subcommittee reports. First one on the list is PMBC.
Yep, I think the only real update I have is, as John had mentioned, the high school group, so that should be done within the next 4 to 5 weeks. They had a little bit of delay from the rain, and then I think now they're waiting on materials. So there's nothing really that can be done about it, other than that, in hopefully 4 weeks, that job will be completed.
The bulk of the roof work is done. It's
Yeah.
just some finishing touches and some trim work. The snow melt system and things like that still have to be finalized.
Okay. Great. Subcommittee report. Well, we're gonna launch an investigation for that negative $15,000.
You got it.
I'm just kidding. No report from the budget subcommittee, although we should maybe get something on the calendar for next month. It's
Yep.
never too early to start.
Yep.
Planning, policies subcommittee.
I can handle this. It's pretty quick. As a result of our calendar change last year, we need to make sure that our policy supports our practice. So the only change in the current absence to observe religious holy days would be the removal of Good Friday from Statement 1. Littleton School District shall close schools for Yom Kippur and Diwali with Good Friday missing. I would respectfully ask that you entertain a second motion to approve the policy.
So the only question I have about this is, because this always struck me as odd, because when we tackled this topic, the sort of the community feedback we got was, let's follow the policy. Let's make this not as, that's the wrong word, like as easy as possible for families, but let's make sure it's maybe as equitable as possible. So it closes with on the second page here that essentially parents or legal guardians have got to notify the school in advance, no less than 5 days. And I was just wondering if that was sort of common practice, if that was unique to Littleton, if that was something that we could possibly adjust, because I do see that as the one barrier to making this as policy friendly as possible. Like, people know they're going to be out, but are they actually thinking sick days ahead of time to say, geez, I've got to notify the administration. Otherwise, these things might not become applicable, such as, of course, the tests are going to be made up. And
Right.
I don't think anyone's actually going to say, ooh, you didn't tell me
Right.
4 days, 5 days ahead
I
of
don't think
time.
we should put that burden on the parents, and most of them will never read that policy and won't even know about it.
Right. So does it make sense to have it in there?
I think there's a version with that,
Okay, because what I had seen with just doing some cursor review of some other districts was that it essentially was the same policy as any other excused absence. Like you could literally call in that day to say, my child's going to be out. This is the reason why, and it's an excused absence. It doesn't need to be 5 days ahead of time.
That's how we, I'd just like to do a check with the principal, because they're in the trenches dealing with this. I'll start with John. What your thoughts on this?
We don't require
Okay.
5, 6 day notice. That what you said, Justin, is correct. It looks like you have time, they found out some information from the districts, and saying, they just notify us. We appreciate notification. Sometimes, there's even times when we found out that sort of after the fact, but, that we don't, we understand.
Perfect. Jason?
Same.
Okay, sure.
They,
Michelle? So we could certainly make a motion to approve with the amendment to take out the statement that refers to giving 5 days notice in advance.
Does that seem to make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Looks like the one time I weigh in on policy.
You know, are you fine with that?
Yeah.
Sure, on the policy.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to remove the part of the policy that says parents need to get 5 days notice in advance of absence. Second that.
Motion made, it's second, and this is policy JHA. This is a second reading, so this is gonna go into effect. Okay, perfect. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none. Mark that as unanimous. Great, thank you, everybody. And our last subcommittee report is the Shaker Lane Building Committee update. Stacy and Superintendent Clenchey.
Yes, maybe we'll have to work together on this one.
We can work
I'm
together
sure,
on
yeah.
this. It's been a pleasure having Stacy at the table and Michelle and Steve at the table as well as we figure out the MSBA's process, which is heavily laden with form filling out, I might say. But the great thing is we're moving right along and we have an OPM firm that the subcommittee interviewed a number of firms and recommended one firm to the full committee. We approved to enter negotiations with that OPM firm. I think we all feel pretty good about it. We're just waiting to see a little more details in terms of the breakdown of hourly wages for certain people doing the OPM. One thing that we really do need to talk about tonight is when we worked with MSBA to determine a cost for the OPM and the design of the plans. At that time, a couple of years ago, we put a figure in our budget, $700,000, and we took that to town meeting. As you know, things have changed in the construction industry significantly since that time. So the Shaker Lane Building Subcommittee met and we created a motion that we would go to the fall town meeting with an article that would ask to raise another $385,000 to fund the project. The good news is there is funding available within various pockets of money. So when they go out, to my knowledge, when they go out to the taxpayer from our meeting, it wouldn't be to ask for that money directly, more money for the taxpayers, it would be through money that's already been acquired within the town.
Okay.
Tracy, you have anything to add?
What's that?
Do you have anything you would like to add to that?
No, not that, no, I don't think so. Yeah, those additional funds were just for, I think we had estimated a little bit more for the design for the, so what we have to do is figure out whether we're renovating or redoing the building, and it's just gonna cost a little bit more for us to make sure that we can invest enough to get good plans for that. So we've kind of been advised that
Yes,
that's kind
so
of
those-
money well spent.
Yeah, so those funds cover the OPM costs, which we have to have by law, and then the feasibility study and the preliminary design phase.
Gotcha. And then next action on that is you need a consensus, you need a vote.
Well, we
just
would
making
need
us aware.
We would need a vote from the school committee. Typically, when articles go on a warrant, if the select board, finance committee, and school committee, if it's applicable to the school, can weigh in. So
Right.
we definitely appreciate a vote in support of this. So it's also important to realize that there's a good portion of this project where we're going to receive 48.86% or something.
Yeah.
With the understanding that they review that number every year and reassess the community as well. So we're getting some money back, which is always a good thing as we continue on with this project.
Yeah, my suggestion would be that we provide some education to the taxpayers and citizens of Littleton as we ask for this additional money, so that they have an understanding of how we're gonna pay for this entire project. And because we were at last town meeting asking for money, and I think it was right on the tail of, another project getting approved, and when does the burden stop on the taxpayer? So we're gonna make sure we get out well in front of this so that everyone understands the money's necessary, but there's a plan.
For sure.
Would you like a motion this evening, or are we gonna table this for next?
That's up to you as a school committee. It'd be nice to have that done so we could submit it to the town so they could include it into the fall town article manual. Okay,
I'll do the motion.
sure.
So, I'd like to propose a motion to vote on. What is it, increasing the,
School committee supporting the request for the increase in funds.
Funding
Okay.
$385,000 to fund the OPM and feasibility study.
okay, so, to increase the budget by $385,000 for the OPM. Feasibility study. Sorry, I lost.
It's okay. We got the gist of it. So motion made, to add a warrant at town meeting for an additional 385,000 required funding for the OPM and feasibility study for the Shaker Lane School.
Perfect.
Excuse me, was that the motion? That you just said?
Stacy made the motion. I was just clarifying it.
Can we hear that motion again, please?
Sure.
Straight out.
Sorry.
loud.
Go ahead, Stacy.
I have to say it again.
I've made it just made things worse, but go ahead. I was trying to help.
Warrant to Town meeting for school committee to support the increased budget of $385,000 for the OPM contract. Did I get it?
OPM and feasibility.
OPM and feasibility study.
Perfect.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. We'll mark it unanimous. Thank you. Good job, Stacy. Without any,
Can I make
Yeah,
one more comment?
you may.
Just for the public to hear regarding busing, to go back to busing. So to be clear, we have not been asking students to show bus passes for now because we just didn't want to go through that. We will sometime in the next week or so, put an announcement out to the parents that we will start asking students to display bus passes on their backpack when they get on the buses. So I just don't want parents to be caught off guard if their kids don't have the passes and things like that. So we will be requesting that in the next week or two for students to have bus passes on their backpacks. Just to be clear.
Got it.
Thank you.
Can we make sure communication goes to parents on that?
Yes.
Kids get stressed out when a bus.
No, we
driver says,
will,
like, you shouldn't on the
that'll
bus.
be an email
Okay,
to parents, or it will be in there. We'll ask the principals to put that in the newsletter.
okay,
I don't know if we want to do a robocall on that. We might, but I'm trying to not overwhelm parents with robocalls, but
Yeah.
It'll be, the best way to do that is probably through the principal newsletters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
With no other business on the agenda, before I ask for an adjournment, I just want to say our next meeting is September 28th, 7 o'clock. We'll have our typical stuff on the agenda, but I just want to make the public aware that as Dr. Clenchey covered, we've got an agenda over the course of the year that you can find available in our packet. So if you're interested in any topics, you'll know what's coming. Or you can reach out to us if you'd like something to end up on the agenda, but September 28th, the two sort of main topics are the MAP testing update as well as AP testing, advanced placement testing. So those are the hot buttons at next meeting. Everyone else is good? A motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
And by Ms. Beano, seconded by Ms. Gold. All those in favor to keep saying aye? Aye. We have adjourned. Thank you.
thank you.